So, welcome everyone. I'm joined here again by Armunn. Hello, Armunn.
Hello, everyone.
And it's quite good weather here in Scotland, and Armunn's been telling me it's quite nice weather in Portugal as well. So, what a great day to be stuck inside watching iPet Goat 2. So we'll try and make this quick so we can enjoy the weather, especially in Scotland because we don't get a lot of it, and I need some sun about me. Anyway, we'll continue on from near as damn it where we left off. So I'll just play it from here, Armunn.
No, but sorry.
Yeah.
Just hold there because I in the last episode I asked for people to give me ideas of what that liquid might be, and we had a commenter, Rorik, I think Rorik something, that said that it might represent nuclear sludge because that is how it's represented, for example, in The Simpsons, right? So, and The Simpsons, of course, are one of the most not predictive programming. I mean, yeah, predictive programming in the sense that it's a cartoon that is used to program events into the memory room that then eventually are manifested in reality. And this has been shown in countless examples, even Donald Trump and so on. But anyway, and so in The Simpsons, that, as you know, involves a nuclear power plant, the nuclear sludge is, so the nuclear waste is presented as more or less this color, right? So he pointed out that it could be nuclear sludge, especially because the next scene, and I think that that is very well spotted. The next scene, you see that a woman waving the flag, and she has the anti-nuclear tattoo or the anti-nuclear drawing on her cheek, right? So it could be an indication of, the fallout of the nuclear sludge the nuclear sludge, of course, here as the fallout, as the repercussion of the nuclear, which could be in the sense of a nuclear explosion, which we had seen in the actual animation, or that the usage of nuclear power in a Chernobyl type of scenario kind of thing, and we're talking narratives here, not real facts, could dictate that. So, of course, like I said, from the very first episode, we're reading this also as a narrative opener, let's say, or disclosing of a narrative, not as real events. But I don't know if you have anything to add to that very interesting comment by Rorik. I'm sorry, I would need to go check Rorik something.
Well, I absolutely think he's on point there as well, and it may link in with that the sea of glass idea that you also see both in the Book of Revelations. I believe you find it in Ezekiel as well, the Book of Ezekiel, where the floor of heaven is a sea of glass, and which is interesting in and of itself. How is glass made? Right, it's made through this chemical reaction, this violent chemical reaction. So. High temperature, exactly. Similarly, as well, we see a sort of green glass that's formed, I believe it's called trinitite, from the aftermath of nuclear explosions as well. It may also relate on a deeper metaphorical level to the idea. We went over Tom Bombadil yesterday for discussion. He has a jacket of blue and shoes of yellow. Something along those lines. So blue and yellow put together, of course, the Ukrainian flags equals green.
Right.
So green it does represent spiritual unripeness and these ideas, decomposition, gangrene, and all of this. But it also relates to that of nature. So it's almost like perhaps it could tie in with the nuclear explosion, that civilization ceases, dies, socialism ceases and dies. Of course, socialism is an outgrowth of late stage industrialized modernity. All of that collapses and is flooded by nature. It's taken back by nature.
Well, green, the way you talk about green, I see that you're not a Celtic fan. Probably you lean more towards Rangers, right?
No,
I'm
God, no.
kidding.
No. I have
Anyway,
nothing against Rangers, but no, I grew up Celtic, unfortunately.
but no, the green became the new color of communism, and here we're talking political sphere as within the narrative, right? So the green replaced the red as the communist um, main color because of environmentalism, right? So everything that is presented as green actually means red in the sense of the political dichotomy, correct? So it is interesting that it is a communist, let's say, represented by the hammer and sickle, there being flooded by, okay, let's call it nuclear sludge that is greenish yellow. I still see yellow, I must be honest, but that is greenish yellow. I give you that, which was a sort of environmentalist color to mask the communist ideals. Let's say the implementation of communist ideals. So that could also play a part there, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think as well this Wan character, I don't
Did you
he
say
may
Wanka? One
this
character?
Wan character, this one individual, um, that he represents the sort of he could also represent the exploited labor force and this idea of the inequality that you find now throughout the world, not just in the global south.
Huh.
But this it's perhaps the green of this false sustainability, this quasi false sort of mechanical nature with a capital N, by the way, sort of mechanical mother nature takes over. And this absolutely, this is what you're saying, that they've traded in their red flags for green, and ultimately it's just the global economic system. It seeks to devour all things. It's this source of this beast, this monolithic beast that whose whose appetite cannot be satiated. So it has to constantly create crisis, not just to maintain control, but it also maintains uh, it maintains a sort of profit mechanism to keep the money. It's not necessarily to generate profit, but it's to keep the debt, which is the money, circulating. And this is how all of this functions. Um,
Hmm.
this is fundamentally the fiat currency system.
Hmm. Well, yeah. Although I don't see this liquid necessarily as any kind of currency per se, but yeah, that could be a more symbolic interpretation. Like this would be. So what you're trying to imply is that, for example, he is flooded in the cryptocurrencies. Is that more where
No, no,
no, no?
I don't think narratively at this point we're at that stage yet.
Hmm.
And nor this came out in 2014. I don't
Hmm.
really see any sort of cryptocurrency found in this, but it
Hmm.
wouldn't be the currency, it would be the liquidity. So again,
Hmm.
it's like inflation itself, quantitative easing. The liquidity eventually drowns those who can't afford the boat
Right.
because their
Okay.
purchasing
Yeah.
power has been eroded.
Uh-huh.
So it could be this. It could be this as well. It could be multiple things. This is how symbolism typically functions, especially in this film. I mean,
Yeah.
this film has both a geopolitical angle to it, and then it has a sort of Gnostic esque angle of, I guess you could call it the sort of soul trap theology. There's something like that woven within it. So, um, yeah, it could be that. It could be something to do with that as well.
Okay. Well, let's move on. Let's see. I just wanted to point out that very interesting comment. I think he's onto something. Go ahead.
I think so.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It's too loud.
We'll stop there and then we'll
Yeah.
go back. Wait, do you want to go back to here? I think we've already covered this mostly.
No, we've
but
covered. Yes, we've
yeah.
covered. Go ahead. Go ahead. You're going to talk about the Christ figure spitting fire, right?
Yeah, we'll go into that. There's something else to mention there, and you see the 28. Some people have mentioned that this may connect to the February 28th US-Iran war, and again he's blowing the shofar. It could be Heimdall's trumpet. You also there's an angelic trumpet that's also sounded during the events of Revelation. There's something to do with his daisy as well. That I don't know if I have the notes on hand right now. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So I sadly counted out the petals of this daisy, and as you can see, actually, if we move it just a little bit ahead, see there, it's in a crescent shape, and the way that the crescent is facing, it's facing the same way as the blood moon. So again, it's the waning gibbous. So something's about to end here. A new moon, new lunar cycle is about to begin. We're about to be born again into sin. Sin being the Sumerian word for the moon, also pronounced Shin, which is the name of the Lord according to 2 Kings 21:7. So there's we see him with the red cape. He has 18 petals. Well, I counted 18 at least. In that unfinished daisy. There's a portion missing, fireworks behind him. So firstly, I linked this to Baron Samedi, which is the voodoo Loa of the dead. It's a sort of demiurgic trickster, sort of wrapped up in a chaotic maestro of an apocalyptic theatre that we're viewing here right now. The idea being as well that he's a skeletal entity. He is dancing feverishly and with mirth and amusement amidst the thermonuclear snowfall. And the reason for that is because fundamentally, either he is the author of the cycles or he has already experienced them previously, and he is a sort of spectre or an eidolon of these various cycles. So he's the personification of, I thought, the alchemical Negredo. So he doesn't merely witness the end of the age, he actually orchestrates it. He is fundamentally pulling the strings of the geopolitical puppets while reveling in the destruction. He's not necessarily this sort of reptilian character that we saw previously, but he appears to be some sort of avatar of it as well. You'll notice previously that we saw written in on the females. I'll just pull it back ever so slightly. I don't want to lose this part. You'll see there that written in her, it's hard to really make out, but you can see pi. Pi is written there. It's very stylized, but pi is written there. You'll see pi, either the symbol or written out incessantly throughout this work, and I haven't really touched upon it much, just because it would take up too much time. But if I can get, yep, here we go. So you can see there on his, that would be his left cheek, is that sort of pi symbol. Even his, even this, the way his face is set up, the way his eyes are set up as well, you can see it's almost set up akin to pi as well. You'll notice too that the left eye is bigger than the right again, because again the left, or his left eye, is that of materiality. So we're still in the destruction of the material here. As I stated as well here, the identification of the rolled up party blower is a sort of eschatological horn, is part of this sort of trickster's accoutrements of the apocalypse. So throughout ancient eschatology, the end of the world was always heralded by a terrifying, divine, acoustic scream, almost, that would permeate all of the world. And so you see this with the blowing of the Hebrew shofar to announce the day of judgment, the sounding of Heimdall's Gejal horn to initiate Ragnarok, or the blast of the seven trumpets in the book of Revelation. So it's almost this frequency as a supreme terror, which is opposed to what we see, for example, in Tolkien's work, or any creation myth for that matter, the logos or the word or the sung frequency that brings the world into being, that creates things into harmony of being. This, of course, creates the disharmony of that. So almost this is a Melkor, if you will, to take it back to Tolkien's work. This character here is Melkor, it's Morgoth. It's something written into the very fabric of the world itself to necessitate, or to initiate rather, these cycles of renewal and creation. You'll notice too that everything he has, right, even for example, the party blower, instead of it being like wood or a trumpet, or a shofar made out of a ram's horn, it is a sort of cheap plastic novelty. All of it is, even the daisy itself, even the cape. It's something you would find in a novelty store, because I state here, by sounding the apocalypse through a sort of party trick, or party favor, the entity demonstrates absolute contempt for the divine tragedy of the earthly realm. The slaughter of the innocents, the sinking of the leviathans, and the burning of the matrix are not necessarily solemn acts, or solemn events, pardon, to this gatekeeper. They fundamentally constitute a festival of reverie for him, or at the very least, he's indifferent to the suffering. So the end of the world is a sort of New Year's celebration for the underworld, or for the harbinger of death himself. And then I mentioned here, just to go through this really quickly, tucked into the Saturnian top hat is a daisy, traditionally the universal symbol of dawn, innocence, and purity, of which the Rubeda approaches. The red dawn of the wiped away simulation, the beginning of a new world age, yet the white and innocent petals have not yet been picked from the flower, thus exposing the yoke of the sun. And hence Baron Samedi is ensuring that no individual may impede the flow of energy, which is why, of course, he grabs the woman and stops her from complaining, or trying to impede the devourment of war, the march of war, and the alchemical transmutation of the twilight of the old to the dawn of the new. And sooth, the numerology and geometry of the flower dictate a much darker esoteric function. In Hebrew Gematria, the number 18 corresponds to the word chai, meaning life. A perfectly formed 18-petaled flower would represent the flourishing of the vital force. The deliberate rendering of this flower as a crescent, again, the impartial cycle, the unfinished cycle, with petals visibly missing or plucked, transforms the daisy into a symbol of decaying, diminished life. It perfectly mirrors the earlier symbolism of the diminished crescent blood moon. The Lord of the Dead thence wears the fading remnants of the earthly life force, the Chai, as a mere decorative trophy upon his crown, the Keter. By the way, this also has connections to Abraham Lincoln and that Abraham Lincoln carrier, but I won't go into that, signifying the total subjugation of biological life to the forces of entropy. And then, of course, lastly, we have that of the crimson cape of Gevura. The red cape sweeping behind the skeletal frame anchors the figure directly to the Kabbalistic pillar of severity. So while the top hat, the black top hat, represents the restrictive, suffocating nature of Saturn, the red garment invokes the Martian, bloody frequency of Gevura. It is the royal mantle of the executioner, soaked in the energetic blood debt harvested from the terrestrial plane during this engineered transition, as Athanasius Kircher would call it, the pyrophyllaciorum, this sort of self-regulating machine of the earth, which self-regulates and it persists through periodic self-sabotage to generate the currency necessary for renewal, which is chaos. And then, of course, we have the fireworks behind him. I've got something else on the gunpowder and even the reactivity of it. So again, it creates fireworks create a beautiful spectacle, but it is a spectacle really born out of a reactivity of three fundamental substances, and one of those, of course, is that of carbon. I believe the other is sulfur, and I think the third one is saltpeter, if I recall correctly. So
Mhm.
uh, I forget the percentages as well, but also they're quite interesting too if you were to look at it purely symbolically. But the detonation of the purple firework denotes, pardon me, directly behind the cranium is a spectacular visual cipher for the extraction of the soul, as we previously established through the symbolism of the Tyrian die. That was in 3 paragraphs before, and the Morning Mother's vial. Purple represents the spiritual essence, the quinta essentia, the fifth essence, the fifth element, liberated only through the violent crushing of the physical shell, the Kelipo. The idea is that the Tyrian purple that you find, for example, in for example, Phoenicia. In fact, I believe it's unique to that area in Phoenicia. It can only be harvested from that snail, vis-a-vis the crushing of its shell. But it's a very engineered and it's a very deliberate crushing. It's done carefully. It's not done through a sort of pure frenzy, because again, to maintain the dyes, to make sure the dyes don't mix with of course the blood and the guts, the snail, you have to crush the thing very, very, very carefully, to of course extract those dyes, which are a protein within the shell. So, and also it links to Phoenicia as well, the maritime sort of debt-laden system that we abide within. By framing the skull, the firework operates as a momentary explosive dark halo, unlike the golden halo of Tiferet, which emanates a constant harmonizing light. This purple burst represents a violent, instantaneous release of almost harvested spiritual energy. It is a visual manifestation of the matrix cracking open, confirming that the alchemical pressure applied to the demiurge has successfully shattered the earthly vessels, thus sort of feeding the self-regulating mechanism of the earth itself. You'll also notice as well behind him he has a sort of a spider-like rock formation which encircles him. So this relates to Yabulon. This also relates, by the way, to the machinic world of debt-laden finance, which is that, again, similar to Yabulon in the Masonic tradition, it's almost that the system itself seeks to enter us in the net, right? The internet, to turn us into Beelzebubs, little flies that we feed from the decay in which they secrete, which is, of course, the money, the spiritual unripeness of the green. And by feeding upon this decay, we become the similitude of flies which get caught in the net of the slumbering spider. And this spider itself, sequestered from us until we are trapped in its net, comes out and then, of course, soaks our blood into its fangs. So what this is sort of symbolic of is fundamentally what we were talking about yesterday of the simulacra, right? There's a difference between, of course, we all create simulacra, we all create our own sort of projections. However, when that is created by another and we give up our own agency, then that becomes dangerous. That becomes the similitude of we are the fly, and of course the system is the spider which will prey upon us. So I think that's going on too. You'll also notice the legs of the spider are akin to phalluses, right? They're very phallic shaped, and you see this throughout. I don't know if we haven't got to it yet with the lighthouse, but we'll get to it with the lighthouse. There's a few other places where this phallus has appeared, the chalkboard. So it's again this idea of the will, domination of will over another. Uh, Jump in, man.
Well, that you said about the simulacra is the most important aspect, in my opinion, because note that, and I know that this is the attire of that voodoo deity kind of figure, but this is also the chosen pop culture, let's say, attire of the illusionist, of the quote unquote magician, stage magician, right? And it is exactly here depicting that the whole thing about the war, the nuclear, this whole charade that we saw is a stage trick, exactly so that people buy the simulacra, make it their own. And they need to make it their own so that the world changing trick has an effect, so that it works, right? So that there's that prestige moment of, yeah, everyone, the new world has arrived. So I think that it is being said here that the whole narrative that we saw build up, the war, the conflict, the nuclear, the rebels, everything is a charade, is a magic trick, and that is perhaps why this figure, who is not living, therefore being represented as a skeleton. This is not a living person, let's say, that is doing this. This is a construct brought to perceived existence. It's like he represents the elites, right? But the elites are a Frankenstein monster in this sense, right? So that is why this figure is telling the rebel woman, it's all a trick. Just let it slide. Just let it pass. If you're fighting a fight that doesn't even exist, in that sense, it's as if saying that the tanks look terrifying, but they're not really tanks. They're like, those inflatable or cardboard, those tanks that the armies sometimes set up to pretend uh, there's ordnance somewhere
Oh
where there
yes,
isn't.
yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah,
talking about?
yeah. They did that with D-Day and such. Yeah.
Right. So I think that is the main point there. That all that you've said in a more esoteric sense is correct, but the way I see it, because of all the involvement of this animation, I think it's letting us know that the whole narrative was just a magic trick, a stage magic trick.
Yeah, and also the top hat as well is related to the hat trick. So it's
Correct. Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Hmm.
and a hat trick in football, of course, is 3 goals. So we have the three
Hmm.
again there too. Um, there's something else that we can mention regarding the top hat, which is, if I recall correctly, it was developed by an Englishman that I think he was an English. I think it wasn't. I forget his name now, but he made this whole sort of bluster surrounding developing this hat, this top hat, in the late 18th century. It was the 1790s or so, and again, it was a total lie. It was a total lie. In fact, the top hat itself, I believe, was being worn in Paris in the mid, or at least variants thereof, were being worn, in the mid 18th century sometime, and so again, it's the top hat itself. Its history is tied to lies. The hat trick, where he pulls just something like an apparition itself out of the hat. That itself, it's all based around illusion. Absolutely spot on. Um,
Yeah.
there's something else I've also got mentioned here regarding pi. So just to quickly sort of mention this, I don't want to go too deeply into this. It
You
relates to
talk
Metatron and all of this, but
you
jump
talk
in.
so much about pie, you're making me hungry. Go on.
um, so So with pi, it does relate to Metatron. It relates to other very significant esoteric ideas that surround effectively Maya. This idea of Maya, this idea of Al-Dajjal, the great deceiver. Just not in terms of eschatology, but just in general, right? This all these notions, even the idea of samsara and yama and all of this. But I state here the cryptic etching of pi directly beneath the dominant left eye, which of course is of severity or lunar, that of Gavura or strict judgment, the material plane, the underworld, which indicates total dominance over the apocalyptic theatre of the absurd, which we are witnessing here. It is the mathematical signature of the architect itself, right? Pi is the transcendental irrational ratio that defines the boundary of the circle. By bearing this mark upon the flesh, the composer of chaos reveals the ultimate architecture of the prison, which is the closed loop. And the closed loop itself, as opposed to the point, the dot, and again, this is found throughout this film. It'll be found at the end with Heliophan as well, the logo. It's also found within the monadic symbol, but that is combined. You have the circle, then you have the point. That's the esoteric sun as opposed to the exoteric sun. The exoteric sun is basically symbolically the closed loop. It's a representation of the original. It is literally the simulacra. It's the simulacra of heaven, and that's what civilization is. They try to pose as God. That's what the elite, the ruling class, attempt to do. It's even in the name, El-Eat, or the Elites, right?
Yes,
So they are, yeah, please.
So in the face of in the face of the natural order, that for an abandoned mind character looks like chaos, they have to mimic the perceived aspects of the order within that chaos and focus in, so zoom in onto particular aspects. So it's as if, if you look at your immediate environment, let's say, so you're zoomed into your location, it may seem that the natural world doesn't have a particular order. Things grow where they grow, and animals roam where they roam, and so on and so forth. So to perceive, to be able to see that order, you would have to zoom out, right? But if you're an abandoned mind character, the only way that you can pretend and create an artificial order that works, because we are organic beings, we never stop being that, we just pretend to be something else, is to zoom in on aspects of order that you can identify. So it would be the same as, making a bush area into a garden, right? So it is a bush nonetheless, but you order it in a specific shape, right? So you zoom in on that particular tract of land, and you apply a design, let's say, to it, right? So it is the same, because of course then what you imply is that the garden starts here and ends there, so you're only in the garden if you are in the vicinity of that, whatever shape it has, square, rectangle, or whatever it is. So I think that society, the artificial sense of society, also works in that same way. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say here, or
Oh, spot on. Well, the
yeah.
English countryside is similar to that in that
Mhm.
regard, which is it's effectively the reordering of what was previously there. Again, it's part of that simulacra notion, right? It's the imitation of for example, the garden is the imitation of the glade, for
Mhm,
instance.
mhm, mhm,
That
mhm.
this sort of notion, and this is exactly what you see. I would say with governments, they attempt to impose themselves as either the intercessors to God, or by being the intercessor, they effectively are God,
Yeah,
because fundamentally they speak on His behalf. It's so. Yeah, so by bearing this mark upon the flesh, he's indicating that he is the architect of the prison, if you will, or of the closed loop. The circle represents the Ouroboros, the endless recycling of time, and the inescapable circumference of the demiurgic simulation, as opposed to the point without a place, which is in the center of that circle, which is the actual essence of the system itself. And this is the problem with all civilizations, because they are closed loop systems attempting to imitate that higher providential truth of the point without a place, or at least represented by it. Ultimately, they want to wipe away that point, or so control it that they take all unpredictability out from under it. Because again, the circle itself emanates from the point. Again, similar to the carousel's roof, right? Or you know, that's in the same shape as a sort of conical um, geometry. So, in that sense, the circle will always be subordinate to it, but the circle itself, the closed loop system, wants to. It almost seeks adversarial conflict with this point because it's unquantifiable. You can't apply pi to that point because it's not necessarily a circle. It's not even a square. It's not a triangle. It's not. It defies geometry, right? At least the placeholder of the point. It defies all of it. It defies demarcation, which of course is the basis of mathematics, and mathematics is the basis of civilization, of art, the city, of all of this, because again, it demarcates land, it zones land, and all of this. So it's the endless recycling of time and the inescapable circumference of the demiurgic simulacra. Marking the lunar eye with pi indicates that the entity it calculates, oversees, and enforces the cyclical turning of the ages. Again, similar to a sort of indifferent and unemotional accountant of a machine of debt. So he is the master of the circumference, ensuring that the inhabitants of the matrix remain trapped upon the cosmic carousel wheel, as long as the soul operates within the bounds of pi, within the geometry of the material circle, as opposed to the point without a place. The soul, that is, it cannot achieve the linear escape velocity required, and this is very Monroe terminology there, but I couldn't think of a different word, required to reach the hidden gate of Dat, which is knowledge, gnosis, right? We could even go beyond that itself, right? To actually know thyself, to know of the soul, and to gain this sort of equilibrium and equanimity with it. So the maestro uses the chaos of the apocalypse not to liberate, but to violently reset the mathematical loop. So he's a sort of arachnid architect of the matrix of Maya. Um, and I mentioned as well that you'll notice we're going to get through all of this, and you're probably seeing these white spots absolutely everywhere. I think I brought it up in several discussions ago, and we had a good chuckle about it, right? Because it is rather quite funny, right? It's a strange thing to put into this type of film, and you'll see it on the points of the legs of the arachnid, again, which are shaped like phalluses. We'll see it later on with the lighthouse, and you'll notice the white tips on them. Now, the white caps of snow resting upon the tips of those structures, they function perfectly as a sort of symbolic alchemical, what was known as the semen virile. So it's literally the raw biological spark of generation. It is it's a crucial it's basically the prima materia, right? Again, if taking it back to Tolkien, if you think of Aru Iluvatar as the creation, what we're seeing here with this individual, let's say the sort of Saturnine architect of this thing, civilization itself, that is the created. He is not the true god, he is one of the gods, right? And so he's one of the elements of the world, but he is most notably and most importantly, he is created. So all he can do, he can't cause anything to come into effect, but he can take the prima materia of what has already been caused by, in this case, Aru Iluvatar, or the Agnostos Theos, the unknown God, or the Pleroma, whatever term you want to use, the true God and the creator. And he takes that prima materia and he fundamentally reshapes it and reconfigures it into different imitation shapes or simulacras. That's all he can do. And this is what the semen virile is ultimately indicating. That is the representation of it. And we're going to see it later on throughout all of these things. So just finally, the true divine creation is sparked by the warm, golden, limitless light of the Ein Sof. We'll see this later on with the fire, with the Christ. The seed depicted here is snow. It's cold, it's crystallized, and it's inextricably bound to the restrictive, freezing nature of Saturn, which is Chronos. We'll get into the qualitative definition of time, which is Kairos. This is what we'll see later on. So this is the seed of the archons, the rulers, quite literally. It represents the cold mechanical code of the demiurgos, the craftsman, designed to forcefully impregnate the void and spawn the next iteration of the terrestrial prison. The epochs bleeding into epochs, the waterfalls cascading into vessels that have been preordained and pre-planned. It is a counterfeit light that binds spirit to matter rather than liberating it. And touching upon your really profound point regarding all of this being an illusion, the most germane thing I can think of is just recently we've had this would-be assassination of Trump. What was it? Was it the White House? Was it news?
Correspondent dinner or something.
Yeah, something like that. Where, of course, it's basically a figurative orgy between the government and the fourth branch of government. The press, and so we've recently, so we've had all of the weirdness surrounding that. It looks, of course, unbelievably fake. It's designed to be, because that's one of the breadcrumbs. And then, of course, we've got the AI video of the guy doing a Naruto run, 100 miles an hour. I thought he was about to, hit the point where he goes back to the future, and some Marty McFly shit going on. And then he was shot, supposedly. And then you look into Thomas Cole Allen, so it's fake because it's the trifold name. Lee Harvey Oswald, God, what was the other? Thomas Matthew Crooks. And now we have as well here, what was it, Thomas Cole Allen or Cole Thomas Allen or something?
Well, more obvious than that is the fact that the surveillance cameras footage show exactly what you would expect cinematographically surveillance camera footage to be, because people were for decades virtually been indoctrinated that surveillance cameras are low res and black and white. You see this on CSI and these crime movies and crime series of that sort, right? So of course, to show that it's a surveillance camera, the image that you see is low res, blurry. You can barely make anything out, and
some
black and white. So yeah,
some electrodes put into a potato.
Yeah, so I mean, you're
in
2026. I can zoom in with my phone and perhaps distinguish the face of the neighbor across the mountain there. But this is the best surveillance camera they have for a hotel that is hosting the president of the United States in an event, right?
Call me a conspiracy theorist, Armunn, but it's almost like they don't want you picking out the details or looking too closely at the thing.
Of course not. It's the same as when you get, when people are told that this is mobile phone footage of, some intervenient in an event. And what do you see? Shaky as heck, low res. You can barely make anything out. I mean, what phone are they? I mean, were they stuck in early 2000s or something? Right? Because it is what is the expectation of the given caption, right? So the caption says surveillance camera, right? And so therefore there is this expectation of black and white, low res. You would have to do a CSI thing and zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. Of course, people are probably not aware that if you zoom in on low res, you see big blocks, big squares called pixels, right? You don't actually see a sharper image. But nonetheless, the expectation is there that from this low res, blurry, black and white footage, they are showing that something happened. So of course, just by that, to me, it was a clear indication, even without looking further into the actual event. But sorry, I just wanted to
No, no,
bring that.
well, no, absolutely absolutely profound point. And well, there was something else I was looking into regarding this Henry Martinez Twitter post.
Hmm.
And this guy supposedly, either he's deleted all of his posts up to this point, or he's just made this one post, because this is the only post that is extant on his Twitter account. And it was posted 21/12/2023. Now, 21 and 12, there's also with Thomas Cole Allen, there's some Gematria links with that, right? Gematria in terms of Gematria English links. So not Gematria at all. Gematria only really works in Hebrew and Aramaic, because those are alphanumeric systems, and in Greek has its own isosophy, because it's also an alphanumeric system, at least anciently. And so again, so he writes this post 21/12/2023, Cole Allen, that's all he writes. And then above on his profile picture, it's obviously Pepe the Frog in a tuxedo, right? And of course all of these people were wearing tuxedos. Part of that God, The Great Gatsby meme of Leonardo DiCaprio holding the champagne and
Yes.
looking all suave, the one. And anyway, the banner image is a very stylized sort of modern art type pop art type thing. And anyway, there's no images on it. It's just again, it's a very strange modern art piece. No image, just a sort of essence. However, if you only get a part of it with the banner image, but if you reverse search the thing, it takes you to the EU Time Machine project, which is again interesting. But it's basically it's a project for three-dimensionally and digitally saving architecture and art on this grand EU database, right? But the Time Machine is interesting, right? Because this is something they're trying to push, I think, and we know that the CIA do this. They muddy the waters, right? It's the, what was it called? The discrediting effect, right? The what you'll do is you'll incessantly post alternative narratives that
Yes.
muddy the water, that confound people to the point where they don't know, what's true, what is up or down.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure it will turn out that the shooter was a time traveling alien.
Well, this is what's being sort of stated, because in 1980, Trump mentioned, obviously as a joke, that, and it was a meme that was being posted around the first time he ran for president, saying, why are the time travelers coming after me? This is the caption. I'm just a real estate mogul, right? And people are tying this in together and saying it's plasma, and it's it's all of
Jeez.
this. It's the looking glass technology, and they're messing with the timelines, bro. But what this does fundamentally is I mean, to steal a term from Aurelius, it's weaponized apophenia, but it's also part of. I was looking into this Psywar report. It wasn't Mind Wars; it was another one. I've got it somewhere on my hard drive, but it stated ARG. So ARG is alternate reality games,
Mm-hmm.
and this is
Yeah.
what you tie in with the sort of confounding effects brought
Yes.
about vis-a-vis informational warfare by muddying the waters and inseminating into the stream of consciousness and alternative dissident consciousness this of strange, perplexing yet enticing ideas regarding the power structures, right?
Yes, because
Um,
if people live within any of the ARGs and, of course, virtual realities, worldviews, whatever other word one wants to use, you are going to have to fill in the blanks yourself, and you do, right? So instead of going to the most logical answer, which would be, it's all pre-written, it's all staged, nothing in the organic sense is happening in that regard. Since you are within, so the mind character is trapped. You were talking about, the loop, the trap, the etc. Is trapped within a sort of ARG LARP situation, and so the only way it can make sense of things is to add to it, right? Is to fill in the blanks, fill in the gaps, fill in the cognitive dissonance parts with extra stuff. And it could be, oh, we live in a computer simulation, and therefore all of these things add up, right? Or it could be it's demons that are influencing and doing whatever, right? Or it's God or whatever. So they do that because they can't possibly conceive the most logical alternative, which is it's just pre-written and performed. That's it. Yes, pre-written as far back, if needed, to 1980 or beyond, right? If needed. Of course, I'm not saying that it's written in specificity and detail, but it's written in outline, and then, of course, detailed more closer to when the time comes, right? But nonetheless, the hints are there way in advance for it to be used and triggered later, right? And of course, who would find those, old references usually, right? These are brought to our attention, even, you and me, by people within the system itself. So it's there to be found. It's there to be discovered, not for people to think it's all fake, but for people to add then the details of how could it be that there's references to this decades in advance. And so you fill in, with your preference. Is it aliens? Is it simulation? Is it God? Is it demons? Is it whatever, right? Time travel, right? So you fill in, and then it becomes yours. You see, the trick works because, and this is what we've been discussing continuously in across several conversations, is that the acquisition of the virtual reality is of key importance. If you add to it, it's already yours. It's you make it yours, right? And so you have an investment in it, and you will protect it. You will protect that virtual reality, even if someone just points 100% irrefutable proof that that virtual reality is nothing more than that. It's a perception. It's not true. It's not real. Nothing of it is real. Even if someone lays it on the table, 100% irrefutable proof, you will defend it because you have sunk what's it called, sunk value,
sunk
what's
cost
the
fallacy.
sunk cost. You have sunk cost in it, right? So you go into the, no, I have invested. Of course, you don't say this to yourself consciously, but it would be the same as saying, I have invested of myself in this, and therefore it has to be true, right? I have invested emotions, I have invested anger, tears, all of these emotions, and I have invested also a part of the story, right? I have invested, a little cognitive dissonance variation to make it fit, and so that makes it mine, right? So I think that is absolutely of key importance.
And this is exactly what we see in terms of the camera panning. So look, as you can see, he's looking down at her. Then
Hmm.
eventually she just gives up,
Yeah.
because the illusion is so insurmountable. And this is exactly what they want to do with these ARGs, these alternate reality games. They want you to follow the breadcrumbs, like Hansel and
Hmm.
Gretel, all the way to the witch's house. Because fundamentally, what you do whilst in the process of continually doing this is why they have permacrisis as well. Um, it is to effectively keep you on a reactive footing and to distract you. I mean, they'll be doing other things materially in the background while you're sort of focused on this. Um, but it's to keep you on a reactive footing, and it's to also, in a subtle way, get you to empower and to almost turn the to transform the image, the abstract image of the system in your mind as this sort of behemoth, this insurmountable behemoth. Um, well, it can control time, it can control space, so
Yes.
it must be
Hmm.
God. It
Yes.
must be God, So you
Yeah.
get this as well. And also, by the way, we
Yes. And if
actually,
you,
yeah,
sorry
jump
to
in.
interrupt there, but if you recall a very vivid and, a very vivid discussion with someone on the hub when I was still in the hub, about it went across 9/11, and at the time it was the California fires. Remember that, with that thing with the blue roofs and
Oh yeah,
etc. Yeah.
yeah.
And that was exactly my point, was that, this individual was coming up with, direct energy weapons and uh, lasers or whatever it was. Okay, whatever it was. I think it was direct energy weapons that he was saying. And my point there was, why go into direct energy weapons when controlled fire is, used viably and safely for decades, if not centuries, right? In movie sets, in live shows, in why do you need direct energy weapons? Why can't it be a movie set? Isn't it easier to do it that way? And then you fill in with the rest, because the moment you say direct energy weapons, you are making them God, right? Gods or devils, it doesn't matter. It's the same. You're giving them more power than humanly available to you, right? So from that moment on, they have a button that they can press and zero in on your house, and all of a sudden, boom, direct energy weapon, and boo, you're gone, right? So you better hide. You better be afraid. Duck and cover, duck and cover, right? What was duck and cover? It was to give the impression that there was this uh, threat looming over the horizon. At any moment, it could happen. And an entire generation, if not
It's
more, lived
it's
under that shadow of that fear, right?
it's also puerile thinking, isn't it? This is how
Right,
children
right,
think. I
right.
remember as a child, I remember watching Arnold Schwarzenegger's film Commando. Remember when he jumped out of the
Commando, yes.
plane?
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, I'll probably do that if I forget, because we were about to go to Jersey on the plane, and the Channel Islands, and I must have been
The
like
old Jersey,
7 at
yeah,
the
the old Jersey.
the old Jersey, yeah, exactly, not the new one. um, and anyway, I'm like, yeah, yeah. If I forget my bag or that, I can just jump off the plane. Or if the plane's about to crash, yeah, I can just jump out the plane. Obviously, not realizing the
Yes.
all of the forces that go into that, and the velocity,
Yeah.
terminal velocity, all of that, because I was a child. But this duck
Mhm.
and cover was exactly that. It literally brings you into subtly, very subtly, into an infantile manner of thinking. It reminds me of that. The 1995 film Braveheart, where William Wallace presents himself as Mel Gibson, presents himself to the Scottish Army. What was it, on the field? I think it was on the Stirling Bridge battle, and he says, "I'll consume the," that. They mention that you can't be William Wallace because William Wallace is 7 feet tall. And he goes, aye, and I've heard. And he consumes the English with fireballs from his eyes and bolts of lightning from his arse. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
exactly the same idea, you know.
yeah.
You paint this individual into a
Mhm.
source of more powerful than he is, right? And
Yes.
again, it sort of provides them the veil of immortality, or as you said, godhood, rather
You
than just being mere
offer,
mortals.
yes, when the moment you do that, you offer power over you to them, to whoever you imagine it is in control. It doesn't matter if it is a real person or not, but you imagine this, group of people or one person or whatever you choose, and you attribute these traits, these technologies, these whatever to them, and therefore it's the same as going to an altar and saying, yes, you are powerful, I am not. Right? It's like protesting. I've said this previously as well. If you protest, you are saying, I do not have power, because those who have power don't protest. They act on the power they have. They use the power they have, right? Protest is a request, and the request means you do not have power, right? It's if you try to, enter my house and I protest, oh, you're entering my house. It means I have no power. I'm showing you I have no power to get you out, right? But if you are trying to come in and I, grab a hammer and hit you on the head, there, I've used my power, right? I've stopped you from actually entering, right? So this is what people don't realize. Whether you attribute power, or you protest, or you vote on the perceived other guy that's going to, make things right, whatever it is, if you participate in an oppositional manner or in a supportive manner, you are going to an altar and worshiping the system itself. And you make it divine because you are saying, I am powerless. Sorry.
Oh no, absolutely, absolutely. I also wanted to point out as well that I always found it interesting, but it almost looks at the top of his forehead, and someone can. It's either Hebrew, cursive Hebrew, or it might be cursive Greek, but to me it actually looks like the calligraphy, the Arabic calligraphy of Allah. Interesting. So the idea is that perhaps this is of God, or this thing believes he is God. Again, as through the means that we've discussed here. Um, so another thing to mention as well, just this will probably be the last one, I think. And oh no, well the hat as well can also relate to this notion that you find in Mevlevi Sufi uh, um, tradition, and we're going to get to the dervish dancers later. But this cylindrical hat was worn by them. It was called a sikke, and in Sufi tradition, the sikke literally represents the tombstone of the ego, so ego death. So when the dervish puts it on and begins to spin, they are enacting the exact sort of ego death that you find throughout, other, is a perennial cross-cultural idea, for example, in Buddhism or even Gnosticism, Catharism as well. So they are dying to the material world, the checkerboard matrix,
Well,
so that the spirit can be
yes.
reborn. This notion.
Let me just cut in there for
Yeah.
a second. It is the same idea behind, for example, the African or Afro American, or whatever name you want to give them, drums. It gets you. The idea is to, as you get involved, dancing to the beat of the drums, which then relates to modern electronic music, for example, raves and that kind of thing. And as you know, I've had direct contact with that world. What it does is, by going in the rhythmic motion, you disconnect temporarily the mind character at all, and therefore you allow a new program, if necessary, to seep in, right? To come in. For example, in a voodoo culture, like I was saying, it allows you to be possessed by the, divine spirit, whatever it is, that you intend to for that particular ritual. For example, right, by dancing to exhaustion, even if necessary, to by dancing in frenzy, you disconnect a little bit of your own personality. And again, I reinforce that although I talk a lot about mind characters, the mind character has a healthy place and a function in the mind, right? But you disconnect that, and therefore you allow it. It opens the door, let's say, for a new, different program. And of course, if you have been indoctrinated, for example, in the like I was saying, the voodoo culture, if you have been indoctrinated that there are these other personalities that can take you over, of course, it becomes a sort of culture bound syndrome, which is the same as demon possession, spirit possession, whatever it is, right? So all of those things, although I'm not against dancing by any means, but the idea here is ritualized, right? Is to exactly enact the dissolution of your own volition um, for another, whether that is perceived as, the volition of God, the volition of, this guardian angel or this guardian spirit or whatever it is, right? But it's always relinquishing yours, opening yours for an external, a perceived external that you may even see as higher and divine and better and whatever, but nonetheless, that is the effect, right? So you relinquish yours for an external.
Absolutely, but back to the simulacra idea as well, and
Mhm.
there's so finally, just to mention on this, we have, for example, so you'll see his teeth, and there's two ways of looking at this. Either it's six from the shofar is on the seventh one. That's either six from the left to the right, and then you'll have two from the right to the left. Or of course, there's seven from the left to the right, counting the one with the the shofar, or the artificial shofar, the party whooper, and from the right to the left to that party whooper, it's three. So the idea, I think it's more along the lines of 3 and 7. That's what he's trying to indicate here, which is so. For example, in Genesis 1:1, the Gematria value is 2,701 of the Hebrew. Bereshit bara Elohim et Hashmaim vet haaretz. As we know, in the beginning, right? The gods, or the God created the heavens and the earth, and so that's 22,701. So that itself is an interesting number, because it's established by the only two reverse primes, which are perfect mirrors of one another. 37 times 73. And fundamentally, so 73rd, funnily enough, is pardon me, 2701 is the 73rd triangular number as well. And if you were to take 2701 stones and arrange them, they would form a perfect, massive equilateral triangle. This also ties in with 666, by the way, because with that sort of triangular geometry, I forget the details of it now. There's an illustration where they take that equilateral triangle, and if you on its edges, if it's straight edges, if you create other triangles there, or is it no? It's something. No. It's if you take 2,701, that equilateral triangle, you can divide it up into four triangles. One in the middle, which is downward facing, which is, I believe, 777, and the others are 666. think that is, don't quote me on that, but I think that is what the illustration represents. So it's quite interesting, the mathematics that you're seeing entwined here. Also, as well, 37 is the 12th prime number, and 73 is the 21st prime number. There's your 12 and 21, as we were mentioning with, Thomas Cole Allen, and also that of Henry Martinez, which posted Cole Allen on the 21st of the 12th, December 2023. So there you go. And another reversal or perfect mirror representing the simulacra meaning the pure imitation of something. So it's the mathematical expression of the mirror or the torus field, which is the as above, so below principle, which is really part of course, it's part of simulation theory, but it even goes beyond that. It's part of even the energetic flux of the world, right? Everything that goes down, all of the energy that dies or goes down, it will always reverse back up. It will be, it's contained in this perfect, hermetically sealed, again, where we get our term hermetically from, which is hermeticism. It's hermetically sealed in this perfect, unbreakable system. So what you see here is he is playing God. I've mentioned that with the 3773, but he's doing so from the mouth and from the teeth. So again, he's part of a devouring essence that's a sort of skullduggery that's going on, no pun intended. So this devouring essence is not of God, but he's playing God. He's pretending to be God. So there's a dissimilitude that you're seeing within the world that he has created, right? Or at least he has hijacked to some degree. The 7 also links with Saturn. The 3 links with the inverted triad, which is either the shin, which we see as well at the top right of his forehead, which is the divine manifestation of the equilibrium. And you also see it at the top as well of the Chokmah, Bina, and Keter, the Sephirotic tree of life. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we've covered everything there. The color of the fireworks. 1, 2, 3. There's 6 fireworks as well. So there's the 6 again. There's something to do with the colors as well, but I don't have the notes at hand. So it basically revolves around the same thing we saw regarding the magnum opus and the colors that are attributed to them. But I think it's more in the Kabbalistic color scheme or the color schema. But effectively, it's denoting the same idea. I can't remember it off by heart now, but it's evoking that same concept. So do you have any other things you want to mention here? We'll continue on, man.
No, continue. Yeah.
Oh, I do apologize. This is on 0.25. Yeah. Oh, you'll notice as well, she has red hair. Oh, yes, there was something I was going to mention regarding the cyan. God, it's somewhere. Damn, I was meant to get that.
You need to get an AI secretary, man, to organize that.
I think I do. Yeah. Hold on.
Give in to the temptation. And
I've got it somewhere here. Damn. Oh, Jesus. I was meant to get that. It's very important as well. Oh yeah, the azure. It's sort of azure or cyan. It's of the color of Chesed from Kabbalistic tradition. I forget the tome now, but I think it's called the Gates of Colors, and it basically vocalizes symbolically a sort of fierce and desperate truth, right? And it's coming from the eyes itself. So, and you see her there, she closes her eyes to it, effectively. She gives up, and she puts her head down and sort of bows, because now is not the time for mercy, which is what Chesed is. Now is not the time for truth. We're in a post-truth era here. So therefore, if the eyes are the windows of the soul, they are framed in the color of mercy, which is visually combating the red and the green of the tanks of their mouths, which are fiery. They're Martian energies
Mm.
of war dominating the rest of the apocalyptic landscape. So it is the cry of the planetary soul begging for the mitigation of the impending sacrifice, either be it either a nuclear sacrifice or just some sort of alchemical sacrifice, if you will. So
Mm.
chesed is loving kindness. You can also link it as well to Vishuddha, which is the throat chakra, which is
Yes,
also
yes.
light blue. I
Yeah.
do believe in esoteric anatomy.
The term
Yeah.
post truth is very interesting because it implies and assumes that there was truth before. So I always find that
Oh yeah.
very interesting. Post truth, it almost indicates, oh yeah, there was truth and now there isn't. That is very interesting because I don't think that truth in the absolute sense is ever capturable by mind characters, by human beings functioning normally. We're not supposed to achieve that. So even the concept of going beyond truth is very telling because the only thing you're going beyond is the previous story, the previous ARG, like you said, the previous virtual reality that was established. So the previous status quo, the previous agreement of what truth was considered to be, right? And before that, you had a different truth that was also transitioned to, the one you lived. So yeah, I always find that term very interesting, post-truth.
I think I think you would be of the opinion, and it is a very good point. And in that sense, it'd be that effectively the world as we knew it, this or the
Yeah.
simulacra, it was working in what was felt like an equilibrium, as opposed to when it gets to its end. Again, it doesn't necessarily feel necessarily of an equilibrium. It has to. It's off kilter because again, it's leading up to its own renewal through
Yeah.
self destruction.
Let me give you an example. So you've been all your life, one way or another, using pounds to pay for things, right? So imagine you wake up one morning, you go to the nearest cafe, and you ask for a cup of coffee, and they say that that'll be 2 sterlings or zblogs, right? And you say, well, what the hell is a zblog? That's the new currency, and you have pounds in your pocket, right? Or in your card, if you want to be more modern. You have pounds in with you, and you say, "But I only have this." No, no, no. That was the previous currency. This is the new currency. So you went to a post-pound setting, which does not mean that the pound was ever true, right? It was an agreed currency, and now the agreed currency changed. That's all that these things mean, at the end of the day. And of course, to you, if you're not, you know, um, aligned with yourself, you would say, "This is the end of the world. What am I going to do now? I only have pounds. I don't even know how to acquire these berlogs." You know, this new currency called berlogs, and then you go into a panic.
Well,
How
I
do
don't know what
I?
his blog is, but I would first try and open up a WordPress account, and I'd see if I get some blogs that way. But if
Yes,
that didn't
those
work,
berlogs.
I'd just give up.
So, but
That's a good point. Yeah.
that is the same idea. So it's people were when I say people here, I mean personas, mind characters were used to a specific agreement, groupal agreement. And that groupal agreement disintegrates and changes to something else. To those who are attached to the previous, it will be considered internally in the mind as the end of the world. And this is what the end of the world means in all the religious sense, scientific sense, scientism sense, I should say, and all the others is the end of the world, like you said, as you know it. So the end of that particular perception, not the end of the physical world. I don't think that ever ends.
It reminds me of that REM song, it's the end of the world
Yes.
and I feel
Yes.
fine.
Yes.
because
Yes.
because ultimately it is the apocalypse, it's the apocalypto, it's the revealing, it's the piercing
Mhm.
of the veil, because fundamentally you are an embryo within the amniotic fluid of the system, and once that goes, like what you're saying, it feels as though it is the end, but fundamentally, like death itself is perhaps only a transitory state. The death of a system is only a transitory state. Something else to mention, you'll notice that she is grabbed on the left side. So again, that's of the sort of counter veiling force of that of severity, right? Of course, the blue is of the right. This is of severity. So of the throat chakra as well, which is interesting because uh, the Vishuddha, the throat chakra, which governs
Mm.
truth, communication, and the vocalization of the logos or the word. She realizes that fundamentally the word itself, when she turns around, is the devourment. So that this is what I think's being. I'm not necessarily saying this is true, but this is what's being communicated here, and it's also what's communicated within alchemy, and all basically everything that branches off from Kabbalism. Um, so she's almost like this cosmetic framing against the final critical layer of the Negredo, right? The encroaching Negredo. She's trying to stop it, and then she realizes, oh God, this is the truth of the system. There is no. I can't
And
reform
she
this
probably
system.
and she probably realized, oh, I was helping this build up.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Yes.
By fighting, I was helping it build up. Go on, sorry.
And finally, as well, you'll notice that she actually is. She looks akin to the female on the Lovers tarot card, which
Mm.
is what, the sixth card, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, I've written here. She's not necessarily just a worker or a protester or some sort of student activist, but she is effectively the symbolic divine feminine at a cosmic crossroads. Right? She almost is the soul, in a sense, and the soul is being told here that well, you have to go through this. This is what you must go through, and of course, it believes the illusion, unfortunately.
Hmm.
And you see here as well that Mary Magdalene, funnily enough, both in Gnostic and Hermetic Christianity, she was typically depicted
Red hair. Yeah.
with red hair, and
Hmm.
so was Sophia or Zoe, and we saw Zoe previously at the classroom with the alphabet. It was hidden in the alphabet, and Z, E, and O were all flipped on their sides. So I've written here that Mary Magdalene is not merely a repentant sinner, but she is the sort of representational chief initiate, the keeper of the inner mysteries. The sciatic Isis, right?
Hmm.
No man hath seen her naked, but the fruits of her womb are that of the sun, meaning that of the cycles in which we live in, the civilizational cycles, and the point from which all light stems forth from. Similar to the eye, right? Similar to the eye. The
Hmm.
mysteries of the cosmos are hidden in the eye, the iris, the pupil, the circle, the point. Um, so she is that sort of resplendent point, and the spiritual bride, pardon, of Christ, the Christ figure. In classical Renaissance art, she is almost universally depicted with flowing red hair. You also see this with Botticelli's Birth of Venus. Lily, or Alice, or Erica Kirk represents this exact archetype, the pure awakened feminine spirit, waiting for the fire of truth to arrive. And you're starting to see the blonde is turning into an auburn here, and then eventually it will turn into the red hair of Christ. So this is the alchemical rubedo, but the awakening of that reddening. Um, so her red hair signifies that she has reached the final stage of spiritual manifestation, or she's at least on that process. We see the finalization of that with the redness, or the orange of Christ. So she will eventually fully realize and hold the primal fire of the spirit, the letter or the shin, as opposed to the Promethean fire. This is the idea. Yeah, there's more to this, but I think that pretty much covers that one. Have we
Okay.
all? We've already mentioned as well the islands as well. Yeah, we've mentioned that.
Yes, you
Yeah,
have.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I don't know if you've got anything to mention regarding the boat, the Crown of Thorns. You even see as well that he's got the fire in his soul patch here, similar
Mhm.
to Osama bin Laden. And then you see as well the pyramid is emanating forth a light, which emanates down towards this eye. And then we have the red eye again. We have the black and white here. Again, this is similar to almost the Djed pillar. We see a blue there as well. I wonder if there's a red at the front of the boat. You know, there's red and blue, this polarity, almost like he's betwixt the two, right? I think it was I think it was Young that mentioned, or it might have been another poet that mentioned that life is like the chirping of two summer insects between. No, it's summer insects between two winters. It's the chirping of summer insects between two winters. So that also could tie into this. But I don't know if you have anything to mention upon that, and perhaps some of the weird tattoos on his body here.
Well, yeah, those tattoos. I mean, that's a collection of those tattoos and all the symbols around this figure is a collection of all the religious supposed traditions come together into one. I still maintain, like I've said before, that I think intuitively that this Christ figure is AI, is a representative of AI. And at this point in the animation, he is still collecting the database. He's collecting all the stories because the next scene will again be every time the Christ figure appears, it's intertwined with the TV demon. So he is basically absorbing the nightmares of the screen reality, so the framed perception of reality, because he is the Christ of that reality. He is not the Christ, and in my opinion, there isn't a Christ. Sorry, guys, for those that I disappointed. But he is the Christ of that particular reality framing. So he is absorbing all of the reality so that he can then be, with a big enough database, the supposed presented savior and regulator of mankind, saving mankind from themselves, which is a concept that we've seen hammered in over and over and over and over on films, political sphere, the news, is this idea that man needs saving from himself, be it through, for example, aliens, be it through, Christ returning, be it through whatever other means and vehicles that you can come up with or align yourself with. And this idea is, like I state, and in my book, is a part of that separation, of that intentional separation of man from the actual world that he is supposed to be in, right? That he is a part of the world. He is not apart from the world. You like this pun? So he is supposed to be an integral aspect of reality. Even, I would say, the key aspect of reality. But he is set in opposition or in an separated position towards the world itself, right? So it needs The world needs saving from man, and man needs saving from himself or from the world, even, right? If you consider that the world is satanic or, demiurgic, man needs saving. Man, as, a spiritual being, needs saving from the demiurge and therefore from the world. It needs release from the world, which is actually the concept of going to heaven. So all of this is, I think, a framing of
And I just
beliefs.
want to
Sorry.
interject as well. That
Yeah.
that need to escape almost props up the system itself.
Of course. Of course. Of course. Of course. Because then you become in opposition with your own existence, right? If you are trapped in a soul trap, reality, a hell, or whatever, then you become rebellious towards your own existence, right? So you turn the anger or the resentment, whatever you want to call it, towards yourself first and foremost, right? Because you shouldn't be here, right? Which is actually the same psychological process at play for what is called the gender dysmorphia, right? Which is you are trapped in a body that isn't yours.
But this
Right?
this is all absolutely, and this is also found interestingly in, I guess you could call it the white guilt phenomenon as well.
Of course, yeah.
Also, as well, it's found in veganism. I think
Mhm.
you could say that oh God, why do we? Well, I will just starve myself. The extreme of that is of course was it breatharianism?
Breatharians, yes. Yeah.
So this idea that I will deny myself sustenance um, because I do not seek to kill sentient creatures that look anthropomorphically like me, right? That have eyes, ears, some sort of central nervous system, so on and so forth. And then, of course, that ties in to the likes of God, what's the other one? It's just went out of my mind. Oh, it escapes me now. But even
Mm.
sustainability, climate change, this sort of
Mhm.
climate alarmism ties in with that too. So it's this self-hatred that you see, and
Yes,
it's
because
based upon supposed moral principles.
yes, because climate change, like Tim Osman rightly pointed out, he was the first that I heard pointing this out. Climate change is a rewriting of the flood myth, right? So the flood myth was men misbehaved, and therefore God created a flood to eradicate men, right? The climate change is men misbehaved, and therefore the climate, so Earth, Gaia, causes extreme weather events, let's call it like that, to eradicate man. Right? It's the same exact thing. In both cases, you are a sinner, right? And the only way to atone for your sins, in one case, is to pray to God and to offer these sacrifices and whatever it is. In the other is to sacrifice your lifestyle or whatever it is, that is demanded. Like, oh, don't use plastic, or uh, use less fuel, don't use electricity, whatever, all these things, right? Or don't eat meat, right?
It shifts the guilt of the system as well. Yeah.
Right, right, right. So in both cases, it makes you a sinner, when the whole idea is that you are not a sinner in any case. You are just you, with pleasant aspects, unpleasant aspects, but both of them are only pleasant or unpleasant when seen from a certain fixed external point of view. Because there is a healthy point, a healthy place for all your aspects, right? Those that you learned to dislike and those that you learned to prefer. Go on, sorry.
No, I think you're spot on. Just to go into some of, I guess you could call it the sort of alchemical or esoteric, the occult
Hmm.
symbolism here. Um, So of course he's traveling through the Styx or the river Styx, that in the Hellenic mythology, also
He's
Roman
in the
mythology.
internet. He's in the
He's in the
internet.
internet, exactly. Yeah, or the Duat. It was also
Hmm.
called as well. I've always found it interesting, the duat, because you hear about the root of David and things like this, and Dawad is quite transliteratively close to that of duat. And the duat as well, of course, in Greek is two. And you see Yama. Yama in Sanskrit means twin. So the two itself is almost evoking it was called the most evil number. I forget who stated that now. Several occult tomes I've read have stated that it's the most evil number. And it's because, again, it's this addition to the one, or it's almost the bifurcation of the one, self-bifurcation of the one into, of course, the polarity itself. So we've went over how, of course, the figurehead is Anubis. He is navigating the duat, or the river Styx, separating the world of the living from the underworld. This can also, in psychological terms, be the abyss, which esoterically, sailing the dark waters, represents navigating the deepest, most terrifying layers of the subconscious mind and the collective trauma born by the matrix, either generationally or within your own local uh, timeline. So the figure is in a state of deep trance, eyes closed, introspectively heading into his own Platonic cave to understand which parts are of the true fire and which are of the shadows, and what is the true fire itself. And he's not relying on physical sight, but on spiritual navigation to cross the abyss. This is why, of course, you see the middle or third eye there. So we see the crown of thorns as well. The crown of thorns is the most universally recognized symbol of the Christ as a sort of archetype of suffering and altruism and self-sacrifice. But esoterically, it serves here a highly specific mechanical function within the process of awakening. So the crown of thorns is interesting because it's a contrastive plot device, which is that the crown should be that thing which empowers one with authority, and if they will it, power as well. However, in this, with the crown of thorns, the more that he seeks to move vis-a-vis his own free will, the more that the thorns will embed into his skull and, of course, quicken his death. So this is interesting. This is almost similar to what we go through, right? As people that are at the bottom of the rungs of the ladder of the system, or so
Well,
it feels. Jump in.
if you look closely there, that's not really a crown of thorns. It's barbed wire, which is the same barbed wire we saw in the initial scene with the goat. So it is basically representing the fenced-in mind, because this will represent the surrogate of the ego, right, of the individual ego, right? And the idea is to fence in that perspective of the external surrogate. So the expert you see on TV, he has a crown of barbed wire, which means he is inside the prison, inside the compound, which is a perception, of course, but it is a perception made up of beliefs. So I think that is, also what represents there, because that is not a crown of thorns as you would usually associate, vines, right? Thorns with vines. This is barbed wire.
Absolutely spot on, yeah. So, and you also see it's entwined vis-a-vis two threads or tendrils of this barbed wire. So it's almost a mechanical nature that's taken over the previous Gaia of vine. So this is a mechanical vine itself. It's something that's man-made, engineered, but of course it tries to appear as though, as we've stated previously, as though it's God itself. So the crown chakra, which is the Sahasrara, so the thorns would represent the ultimate painful restriction of the physical matrix, clamping down on the highest spiritual center, right? But also, funnily enough, in various occult initiations, and by the way, most of these are theosophical. The piercing of the head is required to let the rigid active intellect, or really the ego, how they see the ego bleed out. So again, it's sort of related to ego death, right? And the thorns would, well, the thorns or the barbed wire would represent the necessary suffering and worldly mockery that the soul would endure right before the crown is finally broken open to receive the divine light, right? Again, similar to the Orphic egg and the yolk. We also see as well this very, it's almost this very segregated symbol of, typically we would see the eye within the pyramid, but here we're seeing the pyramid lower than that. Pardon me, the triangle or the pyramid higher than that of the eye, emanating down to the eye. And the only way I've been able to state this is that it's almost seeking to shine the system itself, the trinity, if you will, of the system, the trinity of consciousness is attempting to shine down to the third eye, which is not yet open. So this
Well,
would be the soul. Jump in.
yes, and he is also, if I am correct in my interpretation that he is AI, he is also the all-seeing AI, right? Because that is the big brother, right? The all-seeing, the one that surveils and sees if you've been a sinner or not, keeps track of your habits and all of that. So
Santa.
exactly, if you've been a naughty boy. So yeah, I think that's of course in a religious kind of symbology, but that is what is being depicted there.
Well, if I may, that also
Mhm.
would make sense in regards to your interpretation there. In terms of the reasoning why the A is higher than the I, because it's
Mhm,
AI.
mhm.
So
AI, yes.
yeah,
Mhm,
so it's indicating that sort of play on words. Now again, this is before AI. Well, at least it's before LLMs and their public accessibility. It's not
mhm.
necessarily before AI, but so he could be denoting that. Another thing to mention is that so his physical eyes are closed because they belong to the dualistic world of the Matrix, right? So he's no longer looking at the checkerboard of the black and white. However, the pineal gland, which is the ajna, so that third eye is open. So this is the seat of inner unified wisdom or vision. And we see above this triangle of fire. So that is literally the alchemical sign of fire itself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8. And there's also 8 rays as well. So it's relating to Venus. It's relating to Sophia, the divine feminine. Of course, as we've previously stated, that she has hair red as fire within all of her, at least Renaissance depictions, all the way up to the 1800s, 1900s, as you see if the Rider-Waite tarot deck. The Lover's card being the prime example of that. The Devil card also depicts a similar thing. However, in alchemy, an upward point and triangle is the universal symbol for the element of fire, which connects back to the Hebrew letter Shin, which is the name of the Lord. And of course, according to the book of Hebrews and other various books, I mean, it just constantly mentions this, that Yahweh is a consuming fire, that the Hebrews states that
Mhm.
our God is a consuming fire. And of course, when Ezekiel goes to the throne room, he sees a sort of silhouette of a man encased in fire, eternally burning fire, almost like, I guess, a plasma like entity, right? This pure being of pure fire. And so the rays shine downward from the mind into the body, that of the divine feminine, down into the sort of man lost at sea, right? This is why, of course, the seamen are cast into the birth canal. Well, they're cast into the vaginal canal, and they fertilize that of the egg by a sort of heros gamos, a union of opposites, a sacred marriage. And so again, what you're seeing there is that in a very, very roundabout way, again, this relates to alchemy, it relates to astronomy, it relates to the constellation of Orion, the headless dreamer, which is cast down upon the Eridanus, hence the nursery rhyme, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream, right? And you see there, row, row, row your boat, 3, merrily, 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 4. So the 3 and the 4, this also ties in with awakening in the Day of Judgment in Kabbalah. It's also known as the prophecy of the Seth, where the shin of the fire will meet with the omega point, or the tav, which is, so the penultimate letter of the Hebrew alphabet will meet with the ultimate letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and there will only be 21 letters after that. Hence, 3 times 7, we have the 37 again. So Kabbalah is all based around this, but it sort of denotes the same ideas, right? Surrounding awakening, the Day of Judgment, a conflagration leading to apocalypse, or revealing. So Sophia is sort of trying to cast a life jacket to this lost at sea figure, right? Who only has the ego of his boat, the boat of his ego, pardon, to carry himself through this world. So she's attempting to help him, in a sense. The reason that the 8 ties in with that is we've went over the conjunctional cycle of Venus, and it marks out a pentacle, and it's an 8-year cycle. So the heart as well, you'll notice, is not in the typical area where the heart is. It's in what's known as the solar plexus, if I do recall. I believe, rises higher as this film goes on, if I do recall.
The heart should be a bit higher. Yes,
Yeah, so
usually
it
represented. Yes.
yeah, so it does rise higher eventually to the solar plexus, which is between, the two nipples, right? Let's just say that. And so I've stated here, this is the glowing sacred heart is not positioned on the left side of the chest, where a biological heart sits, nor is it strictly in the center of the upper chest, which would be the heart chakra, the Tiferet. It is interestingly positioned lower, which is hovering either just directly below the solar plexus or in the solar plexus itself. Funnily enough, if you were to overlay the Sephirotic tree of life onto that, you would actually, that where that heart is would be near as damn it where Tiferet is. If you were to visualize his entire body and overlay a Sephirotic tree of life on that. So the solar plexus, which is also known as the Manipura in the chakra system, the solar plexus is the center of willpower, action, and fire. It is how we assert ourselves in the physical world according to the chakra system. And so the heart, which is also known as Anahata or Tiferet in Kabbalah, so the heart is the center of divine love and compassion, as it's stated. It's also the center as well of the soul, again, because the heart is the middling organ that maintains both the body and the mind, or maintains the mind with its connection with the soul. It maintains the duality. It's an equilibrium between the two. So by lowering the sacred heart into the solar plexus, what this film is ultimately illustrating is the perfect fusion of love and will. And it's just kindling. It's not necessarily, a sort of lit fire just yet. And so divine love without will is passive. Will without love is the demiurgos, the tyrannical force. This ties in with, of course, the problematic idea of Aleister Crowley, which is that love is the whole of the law, love under will. So that will, which is the demiurgic force, the tyrannical force, will be above that of love, rather than being in sort of equilibrium with the two, right? So so what you're seeing there is that the primal fire, the flame imperishable truth, right? Whatever that is, again, it's incorporeal, it's an incommensurate, it's an asymptote, has merged. It's merged with divine. So he's merged his divine compassion directly into the center of action. So he's necessarily out. He no longer requires the matrix. He's no longer dependent on the matrix, or he's getting there. But he's but he's done so not out of mere action, meaning active resistance to the system, but he's done so out of an active sort of blazing love. He's sort of conquered the universe not through technology, not through active resistance, but of the merging of the emotional passivity with that active resistance. And by the two merging, he's created a sort of a third alchemical transmutative force, which transcends the limitations of the two that are contained in separation within the matrix itself. And the reason for the solar plexus too is it comes from, etymologically, it comes from the Latin solaris, meaning of the sun. So early anatomists named it this because it is a central hub from which a vast network of nerves radiate outward in all directions, looking exactly like a shining sun. And in the plexus, from the same Latin word, means it's the past participle of plectere, which means to plait, to twine, or to braid. It also means a network of braids. So it's the same idea that you're seeing of the intertwining of the two braids with that of the mechanical vines of the barbed wire there. So yeah, it's literally the braided sun. That's what it means. So everything you're seeing from there is it's almost like he's not necessarily he hasn't yet awakened the heart. So he still has this generative organ of the mind, casting sort of sparks or rays down onto his third eye or his heart, down onto his soul to try and awaken him. To try and awaken him. I'll go over the solar the soul patch and the inverted fire, similar to
No, that's a very
well,
interesting and valid esoteric reading of that, by the way. So go on.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so just also to mention as well, the Tiferet mean literally translates not as heart, but to beauty, harmony, or compassion. So it's related, funnily enough, to the fire. It's related to the Shin as well. And this is why Christ is related to the fire. You'll typically, I was trying to look up the what they call that in Catholicism. It's you see them with the heart. Typically, sometimes it has the thorns, the crown of thorns surrounding it, but it'll be the heart on fire.
Yes,
Christ's heart.
I know the one you mean. Yes.
Yeah, I forget what they call it in Latin, but there's also an interesting connection there too. But basically, Yeshua, Jesus, that is Yahweh, which is the unutterable tetragrammaton, the four-letter name. It is the four elements: the fire, water, air, and earth, and the strict, unyielding law of the Old Testament creator God, who is capricious as well, right? Of polarity or duality. And then Jesus himself is beyond that, which is the inclusion of the letter shin in that tetragrammaton. So yod he shin vod he. So it's literally the quinta essentia. It's the fifth essence. So the shin is the mother letter of fire. It represents the Holy Spirit, the divine breath, and the three ventricles of the awakened heart. This is what we see previously at the chalkboard next to the dragon. The three ventricles of the heart, and also mentions in the Old Testament, the law of the Lord will be written into your heart. So the idea is, of course, that, like what we see in Tolkien's work, that and what does he call the Holy Spirit again? It's the flame imperishable, isn't it? The secret fire.
The Silmarillion, isn't it?
Well, when I think Tolkien and it's in the Silmarillion, yeah. Tolkien likens the Holy Spirit to basically the flame imperishable,
Yeah,
or
flame. Yes.
the secret
Yeah.
fire. So
Yes.
it's the same idea, and then he also mentions in that as well that you basically there's this battle going on between those that seek to worship, let's say Yahweh, right, which is the flame of Adun, this sort of this dark flame, this Promethean fire, which is the adversarial, and that of the primal fire, which is of the secret fire, the Holy Spirit, which is the inclusion of the Shin letter. And yeah, so again, it's this is what it's indicating. You know, it's the primal fire. So Yeshua or Jesus is Yod He Shin Va He, and this is why, by the way, you see INRI. In I think it's mainly Catholicism. I don't think I don't find it in Protestantism here
Yes.
or any Reform religions here. But in Catholicism, the INRI or Judicum Nazarene, Judicum Nazarene Rex. No, pardon me. Jesus Nazarenos Rex Iudicum, which roughly translates to
Jesus the
Jesus the
Nazarene.
Nazareth,
Yes.
yeah,
Mhm. King
King
of
of the
the Jews.
Jews.
Yeah.
So it was to mock him, but that the deep there's several deeper esoteric meanings to that. The primary one is igni natura renovator integra, which is through fire, through the Shin, the Holy Spirit, is the earth reborn whole. So the
Yes.
idea is that eventually, probably similar to what I saw in my dream, as soon as enough a threshold of people awaken from this illusion, it actually begins the onset of the collapse itself. And of course, they're trying to preempt it up to that
When
point,
there's
civilization.
enough lost fuel, right? So when the
Bingo.
machine does not have enough fuel, although I wouldn't keep my hopes up, but you never know. It could happen collectively, even though I don't see it as a collective thing. But each drop of fuel that is removed will count towards that eventual end. I
Mhm.
don't think it will be that you will see a collective effect, an organic collective effect this time around, and in your lifetime and my lifetime. But it adds towards something that you can see. And again, we would have to zoom out, which we can't do. Right, that is the whole point, is that you
Mhm.
can't see beyond. So your ego is a bit more zoomed out, your essence is entirely zoomed out, but you as a mind character, or me as a mind character, we're perpetually zoomed in. It's our purpose to be zoomed in, it's our function, right? So it's the part we occupy, the function we occupy, let's say. And so we can't see when, or if, and
Mhm.
how is it going in that regard. But I think we can at least perceive that the loss of fuel will have an effect later, later on down the road. But I wouldn't keep my hopes up for a collective thing this time around, but we'll see.
Perhaps an 80-20 thing, but so a couple of final things just to mention, and I'll leave I'll leave the final remarks up to you, man. So this fire does not strike the brain or the hands directly. It lands in the center of the tree, so the tiferet, the heart, and that is because it's of temperance. It's of not necessarily gnosis or dad. I don't actually like those words now. This idea of knowledge, as we've discussed with the previous Lord of the Rings discussion, but I prefer the idea of temperance. It's the tempering point, and so you temper things with fire. Funnily enough, between you sort of temper them between the hot and the cold, quickly heating them up and then dousing them in water. That's
Yeah.
how you temper the thing. So it's the realization that the severe mechanical laws of the demiurgos, the civilization, the model of human hyper-domestication, karma, which is the law of consequence, which is literally the toroid, the inescapable hermetically sealed system, the F equals minus F, where, of course, the F equals zero, the plus one, minus one maintaining the void economy. It cannot be defeated by fighting with active intellect or even emotional passivity or vis-a-vis force. It has to be a sort of combinatorial process. And so they can only be transcended through the radical harmonizing fire of a sort of divine love and conscious sacrifice. This is also what you see. Instead of revolution or evolution,
Yeah.
what you actually need with the hangman is instead of evil or evil, you need the reversal of that. It's hidden in the reversal of it.
Mhm.
The way you break out of the system, out of any Chinese finger trap, is you don't fight against it. You reverse your sort of what's the word? You sort of reverse it. You have a reversal of action. You sort of lean into it almost, but don't become entirely, caught in it. So that's what that means. What else? Oh yes, you'll also notice the pillar is at the back of him. The reason for that is the pillar, the column, is an occult symbol of Earth, and so what you're seeing is he is leaving Earth behind him. He's not looking at Earth. He's not fixating upon not necessarily nature, but of the mechanical world in which he left. And you'll notice as well, he looks like a hippie, and the reason for that is hippias means in Greek the nobility. And funnily enough, it was only the nobility that
Long
could have
hair,
long
yes.
hair,
Yeah.
because to have long hair, you have to, keep up with a fairly, a good diet, right? And of course, the peasants could not. So the peasants all had short hair. Funnily enough, I don't know if you've noticed, bar maybe in the 1960s and the 70s and things like that, all the way up to that point, all of the hairstyles of the common man were all short. They're all extremely short. You did have some, I don't know how it was in Portugal, but you had sort of English eccentrics, this English eccentric character, and typically they would have very long hair or unkept hair, and you know, all the way up to probably I would say like 10 years ago, because I was still seeing these characters. They would walk about in kilts, or some of them would walk about like the sort of they had like tweed suits and all that on, and they'd
Yeah.
have the long socks pulled over their tweed their tweed suit. They almost looked like old timey explorers from the 1920s. And so it's again, you could see they were all of money. But yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say on that.
Well, I think that, and also sort of tying it with the previous conversations and even the conversation we had yesterday and that you already published. And also, with the great esoteric rant that you had, which was very good. What can be seen is that this whole charade of sort of this codependency that humanity has with this script, this externalized script, for which we pay for. This is a show that we pay a ticket to watch. So in the same way that you paid a ticket to watch, you can just get up from the chair and walk out of the theater. At least inside your psyche. But what seems obvious is that the whole function of that is an alchemical function, right? And that alchemical function is the ultimate goal of alchemy is not, as has been stated, evolution in the sense of, oh, you turn lead into gold, is that for you to understand that you were gold in the first place, right? That the perceived impurities that you attempted to remove through this interaction with this theater were not impurities at all, were just being rejected as impurities. Lead has a place, gold has a place, silver has a place, everything has a place within you, with all the aspects that make up you. And so the interaction with this whole theater is an alchemical process, not of cleaning up the impurities, but of realizing that the perceived impurities weren't impure at all, they were just misplaced. So these would be my final remarks for this episode. And I thank you again very much, Silas, for another brilliant episode. We advanced how much? This time was just 5 seconds. Come on.
We're at pretty much 4 minutes now. It was it was pretty much 5 to 10 seconds. Yeah.
So we're making progress towards the 666th episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And we're also multitasking at the same time. I saw a comment, some guy saying, you know,
Yes,
you're
yes,
ambitious
you're
gentleman.
yeah.
Yeah, we're ambitious. Yeah.
Anyway, man, great pleasure.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, and we'll arrange something soon for the next one.
Absolutely. And to all the audience members, thank you for joining us. And with that, goodbye. Bye.
Thank you all.